So for this format of podcast, we will be talking about three movies influenced by a favourite and one of your own. So I guess we just jump straight into it. The influenced by bad taste. I think that's as on brand as you could possibly get. What is bad taste?
um, there's a bunch of ways you could describe bad taste. It's the golden age of independent cinema in a single film. It's a love letter to sci-fi by a man who went on to make one of the biggest fantasy franchises in cinema history. It's the directorial debut of Peter Jackson. It's a special effects extravaganza. It's a film that ruined his parents' oven.
Okay.
um, it's a micro budget New Zealand comedy sci-fi horror shot over multiple years by a gang of friends who could only shoot at the weekends, did all the special effects themselves, played multiple characters each. It's terrific. It's about the New Zealand sort of secret armed army division, who are in charge of protecting the Earth and the Moon from extraterrestrial scum, and they have varying degrees of excitement reactions when they finally get invaded.
Hmm. It's a lot, isn't it? I mean, for the first time viewing, because
Yeah.
I hated it the first time I watched it, but it's clicked a lot more since then.
So yeah, I think it's like this is something that Sam and I experienced on the Arrow podcast. Like one of us would say, "Oh, I want to do this one," and it'd be some weird culty film or a film that really benefited from being watched with a group or after a couple of drinks or whatever. And I can completely see that if the first time you watched Bad Taste was, "Oh fuck, I'm doing a podcast in 6 hours, I need to watch Bad Taste," that's not going to be conducive to enjoying it. I think the last time I watched it previously was during lockdown with a friend who had never seen it before, and we watched it together, like on Zoom, and that was really nice because not only was there the sort of the camaraderie and the laughter together, the enjoyment of it together, but it sort of broke that distance a little bit that was so present in the early bit of lockdown before film people were deemed indispensable or fully dispensable, depending on how you look at it, and sent back to work nice and early. But it's yeah, I mean, like you can see the gaps, you can see the seams because it was stitched together quite amateurishly. But I think
4 years, I think it was made over as well. Which
yeah,
is...
I think it was about 4 years. Yeah, and they could only film at weekends. It's wild that it ever happened, and it really shows the sort of the dedication and the lack of other things to do in New Zealand in the 80s. But it's but like despite its kind of roughness, it's actually very adept. Like some of the things it pulls off are really impressive, and I think in the same way that Evil Dead like really like smashed some stuff as far as like, you know, the first one's very serious but obviously very low budget. The second one's very much more like fun and crazy, but both of them have some technical stuff in them. I mean, particularly the second one, obviously, but I'm thinking really about the camera stuff in the first and second one, where they were building their own rigs because they didn't have access to stuff. And I think that there's such a creativity born out of limitation and ingenuity. If you have an intelligent person who's got half of a picture, then what you end up with is a crazy second half of the picture that is so like disconnected from the way the establishment or the sort of the received wisdom is that picture is completed because you've got an inventive mind solving a problem in a new way. And it ends up with like some of my favorite films are, you can really trace that kind of attitude through them as a trait. I posted a thing on social media a little while ago about Angst, a film I love, very tonally different from Bad Taste, but again the camera work in that is wild, and they had a stop motion animator as the cinematographer, so like,
oh wow,
again he brought a very different attitude, a very different sort of skill set, and problem solved in a mad way, and it's really beautiful. And I think one of the next film we'll talk about as well, it shows a lot of the same kind of thing as well.
Yeah. It's the fearlessness, I think, of Bad Taste, really. I mean, I don't know how much money they had to play with, and you'd think, okay, they don't have much money, so all of their ideas are they're going to be ambitious, really. But absolutely not. They go hell for leather on the
It's horrific.
things that they have in this.
And if you look at other films made at that scale that even begin to approach that level of special effects, and I mean special effects across the board, you've got prosthetics, you've got creature suits, you've got puppetry, but then you've got miniatures and you've got pyrotechnics, and like there's so much going on. That house that like I assume we can spoil Bad Taste, but
Yeah.
but also I haven't really explained the plot in any real sense. But the third act, the sort of second half of the film, really is focused around a particular building that later turns out to be a spaceship, and that house was like a listed building. It was like their national, like the New Zealand version of the National Trust look after that. They couldn't damage it. They couldn't do anything to it. So every time you see a wall getting smashed or like something going on, they built that. And they built 3 different versions of that house, one of which was a full-size facade. And then they built a reduced scale one that goes up on a crane with a smoke machine underneath it for when it takes off. And then they had a really small one on a turntable for the shots of it going through space that they just put a load of black cloth on a background and put it on a record turntable and filmed it for it going through space. But there's so much inventiveness, and the reason that it was so informative to me, or so formative, I guess, to me, was that I think there's so much to be learned from watching films where someone sets their sights like just a couple of % above their actually very high skill level, because what it means is you get to see those gaps, you get to see into how the magic is done, but it doesn't rob it of any of its joy, because they're already at such a high level that you're kind of in on the joke. It's like being at a magic show and having being at the end of the thing, and you can start to like maybe get a hint of the mechanisms. Not so much that it spoils the tricks, illusions, but it sets the mind on a different angle. You start to think about things differently. And I remember hearing about how you can't get guns in New Zealand particularly easily. They're very well controlled. So all of those guns they built them. They're bits of pipe and like FIMO. And then the muzzle flash for the guns, Peter Jackson would just pierce a hole in the interpositive with a pin whenever he wanted a muzzle flash. So that light you're seeing is just development light coming through the film, through the celluloid. Oh. Like, that stuff's amazing. The design of those aliens is informed because he did a bigger sculpt than that, but he couldn't fit the heads in his parents' oven to bake the foam. So that's why they've got that weird flat bit on the head, because he had to modify them.
Yeah.
So it's sorry, Andy.
So, no, you go. So it's obvious that your line of work now is being very influenced by Bad Taste, as we're discussing. Do you remember? Was it that you saw Bad Taste and said, "I want to become a special effects artist. I want to be involved in this," or was it more of you wanted to be involved in movies in some way, and then seeing that kind of pushed you on the path? Was it one or the other, or something else?
I think I had known I wanted to do. It's very early. It's very formative. It isn't the thing that put me on to film or special effects, but it was definitely instrumental, and it was one of the first films of that nature that I saw. So I would have been at. I just started secondary school, so I would have been like 11, 12, something like that. I was always the youngest in my year. I'm early August birthday. And a friend of mine had got hold of a copy of it and he'd seen it and he was raving about it. And this must have been like 6 months after I took the effects book out of the library, and that was really the thing that kind of cemented it, because up until that point I was a magic nerd. I like magic. I didn't really get to see movies that much at that age, so I hadn't seen a huge number of films. The films I had seen were weird. Like I'd get to go to the cinema and stuff. Like I'd see regular mainstream films at the cinema. And I don't want to
Yeah.
repeat myself too much. I've definitely told this story before, so I'll keep it brief. But we did have a TV in the house and we had a VHS player, but really only because my grandmother was like trolling my mother, as far as I could tell. My mum didn't want my sister or myself to, or me to watch films really, or TV at all. I read a lot. And there were 3 VHS tapes in the house. There was an animated Tintin movie. There was and later we had an Asterix movie as well. There was a collection of short stop motion animations done to opera. And then there was a copy of Peter Greenaway's The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover. And I set an alarm for like 3 a.m. and came downstairs and watched The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, which was an 18 rated movie, on the TV. And then I did it again the next night, and then I did it again the next night, and then I did it again. I don't know how many times I watched it. It feels like it was a month or so, but it was probably like a week. But I saw it a lot. And so for a long time, that was the film I'd seen more than any other movie. But at that point, I didn't really connect special effects. I didn't know that special effects was a thing. Like I knew I liked film, I loved storytelling, I liked reading, but I hadn't really considered special effects as a thing one could do. And then I'd read this book in the library that was on Silver Age Hollywood, and particularly on makeup and makeup effects. And it was one of those books that had like a section of color photographs in the middle. And they had a section at the end, black and white photos, on Tom Savini that was done as a sort of, where is the industry going? Like, what's the future of the industry? And Tom was always very good at positioning himself from a media perspective. One of his greatest assets was marketing himself. And so that was around about the same time that the adults in my life were asking me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, well, I want to do special effects. Obviously, like it turns out that's a job. It turns out you can make monsters and dead bodies, and why wouldn't I want to do that? Because it felt like it was magic tricks that served a purpose. Like magic tricks were great fun, but they were very self-satisfied. Like they were just for their own thing. Not there's anything wrong with that. That's what they're meant to be. But here was the combination of 2 things that I really loved, and it was storytelling and magic. And so the idea that those 2 things came together was really exciting. And then, mere months after that, seeing a film like Bad Taste, it's like, oh fuck, this is what it is. Like this is filmmaking. This is cinema.
Yeah.
And then not long after that, an irresponsible older boy who in my mind is still like a full adult, but was probably like 17, 18, at the local Video Solent, just like was like, yeah, all right, gave me a UR18 video rental card. I'm a child at this point. And they had a thing where if you took the tape back before 6 o'clock on the same day you rented it, you got it for half price. And so on the weekends, a friend of mine and I would go down and we would rent just anything off the old horror shelf, which was like 50p or £1 a tape. And we just marathon everything we could get through. And we normally watch the shorter films first, go by running time. And then we'd take back at like 5:45, we'd take back everything we'd already watched, get half of the money back, and then spend that on more tapes that we would take out overnight and just watch more films. And that was the sort of beginning of my rapacious consuming of movies. But a bootleg of Bad Taste was kind of what started it all.
The Bad Taste, the poster with the alien with the middle finger.
Yeah.
I remember it so vividly. From even so, I would have been, was it 87 it came out? So it was when I was born.
Yeah.
So, and I still remember seeing it in video, and we had a local video store called the Video Drive-In, which you didn't have to drive into. So it was very strange choice of words for it. But it always was something that stuck out, and it always, I remember being younger and thinking, "Oh, that looks like maybe not scary, but maybe on like an extreme horror level." It felt like
Yeah.
maybe it was to me.
Well, it's
Like,
it's
just
a
the way it
monster, and
looks,
he's holding a gun, and I think he's wearing
and he's giving you
a
the
suit,
finger.
and he's giving you the finger. There are two versions. There's one where he's flicking the V's, and there's one where he's got his middle finger up.
Oh, okay.
That they did for different
Right, okay.
markets. And I think I used to have an old lenticular case. I probably still do. I'm not. I'm borderline a hoarder. A lenticular case that's swapped between the two.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not just the practical effects in this. It's gross on an entirely different level, which Peter Jackson did a lot in New Zealand, especially. This doesn't narrow it down for a lot of his early work, but the vomiting scene.
Yeah. The vomiting's amazing. And again, from an effects point of view, because, okay, so the vomiting is Derek, played by Peter Jackson, watching the alien, played by Peter Jackson, vomit. And they cut to a head that is a puppet of Peter Jackson, made by Peter Jackson. And because he didn't have anyone else who did special effects, and he was doing a lot of this stuff just on his own, to get that live cast, he just filled a washing up bowl with alginate, held his breath, and stuck his face in it, and then just like held his breath long enough that it went off. So there's only like the front half of his head there is a live cast, and the rest is sort of just padded out. But because of all the hair and the beard and stuff, he gets away with it. It's a terrific puppet. It really serves its purpose.
Didn't even notice it was that. I thought I just didn't question it.
That's it. And that's what I mean about the fact that you can tell it's kind of stuck together with tape and good intentions, but actually sometimes they just get stuff past you. Like the editing and the timing is terrific, considering he's playing multiple characters. Like there are fantastically famous and well-paid actors who can't do that, and he's not an actor. Even
I didn't even know he played Derek until this time around when looked on IMDb.
Yeah. That same when obviously first time watch for me, and I knew what Peter Jackson looked like, but it wasn't until me and Rob were discussing it that he plays Derek as well. It's like, no, he doesn't. Like, it's like it's very League of Gentlemen.
Yes,
kind of is that about him. But it's very interesting that way.
Yeah, it's terrific, and to be honest, the writing I think is very funny as well. Like I something about the pacing, the sort of dryness of it, like talking about the vomiting scene. They see Derek, and he has to pretend to be an alien, and they're all drinking the vomit because that's their like little thing. And he doesn't want to get rumbled, so he joins in and he drinks a load of vomit, and he goes back, and one of the other guys has been watching him, and they ask him how he is, and he's like, "Oh, you'll never believe what happened to me." And one of them just goes, "Did you have to drink some Chuck?"
It's the New Zealand where they're very, very funny like that.
I just love it. I love everything about it.
It's interesting as well, just with obviously what Peter Jackson went on to do with Lord of the Rings and everything, and this was something we kind of, I think we discussed in a different podcast. I'm maybe misremembering, but the fact that those would have been filmed in kind of 1998, and seeing the special effects in that, the way that they were, I mean, they still hold up now, like, and that sort of transition from what he was doing with Bad Taste to working on something as huge as Lord of the Rings, which is one of my favourite.
Yeah.
The three of them are three of my favourite movies all time, and having the ability to kind of evolve himself that way as well, and in a totally different way, even in that 10-year, 12-year period, it would have been, the advancements would have been so drastic, and he was able to have something that 25 years down the line, I think, since the first one is, that it still looks great.
Yeah, I think that he had a background in special effects. He didn't do special effects for that long, but he was very, he did his own effects early on, and then he was involved with people that would become wetter down the line. Like, there's a lot of very deliberate through line from an effects standpoint in his career. Like the death in The Frighteners was essentially a screen test for the ring wraiths. It's the same tech. So he was always thinking about the next project, always thinking about how he could improve on this stuff. They had to do all the interpositives for the VFX for the first Lord of the Rings on analog because Dimension wouldn't pay to have that stuff digitized. And it was only when the first one did as well as it did that they were then allowed to use digital interpositives for the effects for 2 and 3. But I think a thing I have always said is like structure your work based on what you know you can do, and then make your own life difficult by adding in problems that you know you can solve, because that way the audience don't know that you already know how to do that stuff. So to the audience, they're just seeing this amazing list of accomplishments and achievements that you're throwing at the screen, and they're like, "Fuck me, this got everything. This is great." But if you go, here's the bones of the story, and now we're going to hang all this stuff off it. But we know how to do it. Like, and I think that's why like Terminator 2 is so timeless as well, because Cameron, with a background in effects as a matte painter and working in effects departments, came in knowing that if he put stuff in that and it didn't work and the story required it, it kills the movie. But if they go, okay, well, what does CGI do really well? It does kind of mirror blobs really well. Okay, so we'll make our bad guy a mirror blob and a cop. The two worst things imaginable. An American policeman and a mirrored blob. And all the way through, there's a beautiful mix of practical and digital in Terminator 2. But the best effect in the film is all in camera. It's all practical, and no one notices it. No one ever sees it as an effect. And it's like what we were talking about with Bad Taste. You know, it's absolutely full of stuff where you're like, okay, well, yeah, that's made of string, and they had to like, that's clearly got someone like holding it up. But then they can cut between two characters played by the same person and a puppet. All three of them are the same person, and you don't know, because the flow of it, the editing is so solid, the direction's so good, and all of the effects are good enough to do everything that they're needed for.
Yeah. And I don't think I could talk about Bad Taste without mentioning one of his follow-ups anyway. I'm not sure whether it fell next, but Brain Dead. That is
Brain Dead's number 3,
incredibly...
so it was Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, and then Brain Dead.
Yeah. Incredibly audacious to do that sort of project. He has to have a background in makeup to even and effects to even dare to do that lawnmower scene, because that is unfathomable, really.
Yeah, that was the one I saw. That was the second one of his I saw, and again, it boggles your mind when you see it, especially like seeing it relatively contemporarily. It was astonishing because I'd seen Bad Taste, but I hadn't seen anything like Brain Dead. It's weird because actually going back to Brain Dead, I most of my staff are at least a decade younger than me, and every now and then I go, wait, you haven't seen what now? So over the years we've done a few screenings, and Brain Dead was one of them. I think it's a weird list, the list of films I've made my team watch. When I was still teaching, I found out that a load of my students hadn't seen The Thing, so I organised a screening of The Thing.
Wow.
Which was amazing. So we did The Thing, we did Videodrome, we've done that was when we were doing the Arrow podcast. Both of those were the watch that I did for the podcast I had my staff at, my students at. But then we did Bad Taste, as Brain Dead rather. I think we did Brain Dead in the run up to Gen Z because they hadn't seen that before we did Ben's zombie thing. And then we did a double bill once of Threads and Basketball.
Oh wow, that's a double bill.
Threads first and then Basketball, or did you show Basketball and then just go, right, you need to come down now?
No. You want Basketball to be like the palate cleanser, the reward for your homework.
Yeah.
Yeah.